anyone takes anything away from this, is, go home and plant a tree.
It's sort of a buzzword, it's sort of a trend, and it'll go away. The most beautiful thing about climate action is that whenever you're doing something good for the environment, in turn you're getting something. Then this will come in. For example, you and me growing up, how many times were we told by our families to recycle something?
Yeah, never.
I think never.
Yeah. There's a lack of funding, there's a lack of awareness, there's a lack of young people going in there. Your one straw maybe cannot change it, but it's, I think, time to now take charge.
Hello and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to another episode of DSG Podcast. Let's keep talking green. Welcome back to a brand new episode. I'm Amin Faiz Khan, and today we're going to talk about something very interesting that we haven't really tapped before, and it is the sustainable packaging, which is the future of waste-free world. So whenever we talk about sustainability, it is not possible that we do not talk about how we are managing the waste, especially in Pakistan. We have some questionable circumstances that I think we need to talk about more. So today I have the perfect guest with me to discuss the topic. I have with myself Rija Tayyab Qureshi. She's the head of sustainability and marketing at Roshan Packages. Rija brings in years of experience in field of sustainability and specifically recycling and waste management. So without ado, we'll hop into the topic and we'll discuss that how we can make greener future of Pakistan by taking recycling and waste management more seriously. So hello Rija, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining, taking out time. So, Rija, as we were talking earlier, that we have talked about a number of topics related to sustainability. We've precisely talked about energy mostly. But today I wanted to tap in that how, waste management is going to be inculcated, how we're talking about packaging, how we're bringing in more sustainable packaging. So before we hop into that, I would like to know your journey. How did you get into this field? Where have you been before? So share a little about your journey, please.
Okay, so I went to college in America. So I was at Cornell for my undergrad, where I specialized in industrial and labor relations. So that's very much, labor history, labor law, labor econ. So very much the social side or the people side of, sustainability. And tab, I would say even in America, sustainability was not as big of a buzzword as it is now. So this is like back in 2017, 2018. And I have minors in gender studies and history of capitalism. So very much looking at how can you make the workplace more inclusive was what I studied in college. And then when I came back, and it sort of became like a natural transition where I started off with basically, the labor part of it and looking into reporting for annual reports, etc., because we are a publicly listed company. So it started off with metrics with that, working with HR a bit, and then they needed help with digital marketing. So when all of that started happening, and I started looking into our processes, I realized that recycling is a big part of packaging anyway. It already was a big part of our qualification department already, because we can talk about this more. There's a business case for recycling as well in packaging, where it's obviously cheaper to sometimes recycle than to cut down virgin trees, especially in a country like Pakistan where we don't have that many trees. So that
we should not be cutting any more of them.
I mean, we should be planting way more trees. So if anyone takes anything away from this, is go home and plant a tree. So then slowly it just so happened that, as a packaging company, how do you differentiate yourself? What are the standards that are coming in? What do countries in Europe want? What do companies in America want? And it was sustainability, it was recycling, and it was transparency in the supply chain. So that's how my role transitioned from marketing and HR to then having a sustainability office also.
Definitely. It's interesting overall. And I think there's a demand for having a sustainability department, and I think every company now. So you mentioned something really interesting, Rija, that you said that sustainability is now a buzzword. So we hear a lot about it. Now everyone's talking about it. But then again, what some people right now still think in Pakistan is that it's sort of a buzzword, it's sort of a trend, and it'll go away. So what do you think, that it is something that needs to stay, or is it something that comes like trends and will go away one day?
I mean, I personally think it's not going to go away just because the climate crisis is only going to get worse. So I think maybe older generations don't take this as seriously. And
that's very much evident.
Yeah, and it's honestly because they're not going to be here to see what's going to happen. I think you and I, or maybe, you know, our children are going to be here to see what we really did to the planet. So I actually see sustainability really booming. I remember actually it was the floods that happened in 2022, the really bad floods where 1/3 of Pakistan was underwater. After that, in like professional circles, I saw sustainability being really accepted. Before that, I did see that people were like, "Oh, what do you mean, like global warming? What do you mean climate
It's a
crisis?
myth. It's not going to happen."
I literally remember talking to someone in my family and being like, you know, like the north, there's going to be a lot of floods there soon in a couple of years, and they were like, "What do you mean? People don't believe everything you see online." And literally, it happened the next year. So it's like we have the science to say that it's only going to get worse, and we can try and, you know, put our heads down in the sand and do nothing about it. But I don't think you and I have that choice.
Exactly. And you know what, surprisingly, what's fun is that till the day, if you mention in a Desi family that we need to recycle things, we need to do something, we need to do something for climate action, it's still a myth, climate crisis, for many people. So I think the only way to go is the more we talk about it, the more awareness we'll create in people, the more we will know that this is something which is imperative and needs to be done. So I have a question now, that basically when any layman would watch a podcast like this, and they would see that a packaging company or a paper company would talking about sustainability, so the initial thought would be that they are very interconnected, and yet they are very corresponding in the way that you're in terms cutting paper, you're cutting trees for making the packaging, and you're also in one way or another affecting the environment. So I would like to know that at Roshan Packages, how are you guys mitigating this crisis, that you have to keep up with the sustainability standard as well, and you have to deliver your product as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a huge problem with like packaging in particular, where obviously it protects the product, but it ends up in landfills, or it ends up not being recycled, or just like not even in landfills and around us at all times. So, I mean, as a responsible company, we're doing a lot of things. So firstly, we've been working on our carbon emissions. So we did carbon emission accounting with the UNGC 2 years ago, and we had a team from IBA come, so really building partnerships with academia. And then they gave us a few recommendations on how to improve our carbon emissions. One of it was obviously solar energy, and that's something we implemented recently, and we were able to reduce our, you know, solar energy, reduce our electricity and carbon footprint by 30 to 40%.
That's great.
When we look at the bills from last year to this year. So, you know, there's that, like, you know, carbon emissions are the direct link between climate change, but we have so many others, which is like once you, you know, let paper just randomly degrade, it releases a lot of methane, and methane is way worse than carbon dioxide. So it's really in our best interest to be recycling. And then obviously the plastic problem is a way other giant that's happening. So for that, we have a lot of so in our corrugation facility, which is, you know, Dabbe, we have 100% recycled products that we're able to provide, and we're able to provide recycling as well. So our waste is already going back to the paper mills and then coming back to us in the form of paper. So any cutting, anything like that, it's not really going to landfills or anything. So our process is almost 100% waste free at this point. And because there's a business case for it, right? Like if there's random waste that we've paid for, we've made these sheets, or we have this paper, why should we just throw it away?
Throw it away instead of utilizing it.
When we can get a discount on the paper that we get. So that was something that was already happening. For Inflexible, so we make wrappers and courier bags. Daraz came with us and asked us for recycled
Packaging boxes?
courier
Cool.
bags, so the plastic ones. And so I mean, as a company, we have access to our own waste, which is quite clean and quite easy to recycle in plastics. So we're able to give them like recycled resin courier bags, around 80% recycled.
That's great. I think it's wonderful. And what I find the most beautiful thing about climate action is that whenever you're doing something good for the environment, in turn you're getting something. For example, if you're putting up a solar power plant, your electricity is being reduced. If you're recycling the material, you're getting the waste. So I think it's all about the intention of doing it, and it needs to be increased more and more in the industry right now in Pakistan. But I would not be very pessimist about it. And I think now the change is happening. People are finally talking about it. But then comes in the part of what I'm always criticized for mentioning is that government part. So when we look at, you've been to, as you mentioned, you've done your studies in States. So there are lots and lots of packaging industries there as well. There are lots of industries there which are actually very much prudent to affecting the environment. But then we see their regulations, we see their proper landfills are being monitored. They have these incinerators and everything. So what do you think, that in Pakistan, are we doing enough for the waste management on that level? Since as far as I know, there's just only one landfill that we have, and that's also not very much regulated.
I mean, I think we have a few landfills. The issue is not really with the landfills. I mean, outside of Lahore, you'll see that like even waste collection is an issue. In Karachi, for example, right? Like there's no one coming to pick up your waste. But what should be happening is that we should be having waste segregation at source, which means that in our households or in our businesses or in our restaurants, we should be segregating our waste, which is really the one impediment to recycling right now. So, the main issue that recyclers have right now is, where is the waste, right? Like if I'm a plastic recycler, where do I go find the plastic? Because once you've eaten that wrapper, you've thrown it away, and then a kabaria has come and taken it, but I don't know where that kabaria took it or who that kabaria is, because it's such an informal sector. A lot of these people are not registered. These are registered as citizens, as opposed to, even though that's a whole other thing, but they all
add up to it.
Let alone a business, right? So if I go in and I'm like, I want to put up a recycling plastic plant, and I've spoken to a lot of people who are doing recycling and plastics, and they come to us asking us for our waste, which is very clean and easy, and it's just like when we're making a wrapper, so the cutting and stuff. So that's easy waste, and that, you can make a lot of things out of it. That's clean waste. The issue is like once you have it in a wrapper, Johar Joshanda's on it, what happens then, So, there's that. So, and if there was a segregation at source, and if there was, so we have the LWMC, which does, I think, really good work. But if
that only works in Lahore, and that's a very small part of Pakistan.
Exactly, right? So if we had it all over Pakistan, and then we were able to segregate it, because the most, so first, finding the waste is an issue and adds up to the cost. The second cost that comes in is the segregation, right? When I get the waste, it's all mixed up. So I have to either employ someone to get rid of, the random waste that I cannot use, or I have to get a machine, and that's a huge cost that no one is willing to bear, right? So either the government has to bear that, or the community has to bear that, which is very interesting. In India, they've been able to do it, and I talk about India because I feel like they're similar in their mindset to us.
Exactly.
So they were able to do it in very community based organizations. So it wasn't just the government. So it was maybe an MNC with an NGO, with the departmental store, with the school, sort of teaching everyone in a whole community coming together to recycle and segregate.
I think that's the way to go about it, because I think एक बहुत बड़ा issue जो पाकिस्तान में आ जाता है, it's our education levels and our awareness levels. So the more they will be in the people will be more aware of it. For example, recently we did a workshop in LUMS with some students from underprivileged areas, and we talked about waste management with them. So to my surprise, many of the kids actually knew about it. And when we talked to an older age group, they don't really care. So I think the way to go about it, agar hum in chote bachon ko hi from an early age we train them and we build in this mindset, then this will come in. For example, you and me growing up, how many times were we told by our families to recycle something?
Yeah, never.
I think never.
Yeah.
So I think ये जो हमारा consumerism है, इसको हमें थोड़ा सा बहुत ज़्यादा mitigate करने की ज़रूरत है in having this footprint calculated somehow. And so going about it, so how have you guys been inculcating academia with Roshan Packages for teaching the kids at a young age that this is something that needs to come in?
So that's how I met you, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've been doing a lot of university outreach where we feel like, you guys are going to be in the professional setting soon in a couple of years, and you're going to be decision makers, whether it's in your households or, in your professional life. And we want people who have that power to have that understanding of, recycling, of food safety, of, what good packaging looks like and what that civic sense is of what your impact can be. So that's one of the things we're doing. Other than that, as I said, small projects wherever, carbon emission accounting. We've signed a couple of MOUs with a couple of universities for internships. So they're going to be coming in and helping me with life cycle assessments.
Nice.
So that's where, you assess the carbon impact of one product. So if there's a box, from the starting to the ending, what is the carbon impact of that one product? And that's something that hasn't been done in Pakistan. And the reason it's important is so that we can sort of trace and track and also make decisions based on the products, right? So like if maybe incinerating might have less carbon emissions than recycling because maybe there's a lot of transportation that's happening in the middle, right? So maybe that's a better option sometimes.
And I think whatever sort of the waste disposal that we look at, whether these are incinerators, they're landfills, they are sort of those chemical peel-offs. So I think the thing is that all of them have an impact some way. For example, in the incinerator, you have the emissions, in the landfill, it's going down to the soil. But I think your point is very well valid that recycling is way better than the disposal in any way. So recycling in itself, I think it's a beautiful concept. You get something new out of something which is termed as waste. So there's also a term I hear in recycling, which is there's recycling and there's upcycling. So from your experience, I'd like to know that what is the basic difference and how can people go about that in their daily lives about it?
So I'll give you like an example that we did, right? So we have, when we get paper, it's like in a roll form. So it's huge rolls of paper that we're getting to make our corrugation, to making our boxes. But at the end, we get this film of paper that we're unable to use that the machine doesn't take in. So, for example, when you have a toilet paper roll, right, there's that one layer that perhaps
hard to take off,
right? So we had a bunch of those left. And so there's one option that we send them back to the paper mills and it gets recycled. But one of our employees had this idea and he said, okay, what if I make paper bags out of this and we can sell it? So we were able, from that waste, we were able to, and it's perfectly fine paper. He was completely right. It's perfectly okay paper. We were able to make from one or two of the rolls, 2,000 small paper bags that you're able to use for, restaurants. So they were sold out completely actually within like 2 weeks. Like we did not have any left. We got some like printing done on them, some generic cute printing, and the restaurants loved it. And it was real good quality paper as well, because that's the kind of paper you don't see around, and no one's like investing in that kind of paper. So so I think that's the main difference between upcycling and recycling. You just have to see what you're able to do and what infrastructure you have, I think.
Exactly. So I think the major difference would be that recycling is totally breaking down and making it something new, and upcycling is just moving your way around it.
But upcycling also means you can get a better price for it, right? So upcycling means that like recycling, for example, they're going to pay me per kg. For them, it's waste. For me, that can be upcycled to maybe now I can charge 30 rupees for this part only. And maybe they were paying me 30 rupees.
So that's more like how we get those clothes out of Khadi, Sapphire, and we get the bags out of their material as well. So that's upcycling.
That's a bit of upcycling as well happening.
Right. So I think that's wonderful, and that can be done at a home level as well. For example, I'm always intrigued to see how my Amma is gathering those compost and making that for the garden and everything, and that's something that that needs to be done. And I think everyone can do this at home. For the people watching, I think the mothers are really good at saving things which we can use later. So the composting is a great idea in terms of waste management as well.
Yeah, composting is great. And if talking about households, like even clothing is great to upcycle, maybe if it's out of fashion, cut it a little, sew it up a little, it's small things. You can dye stuff at home as well.
Exactly.
Or get it dyed. So maybe trying to be a bit more mindful of our habits.
Definitely. I think one thing that we really need to talk about in Pakistan is the fast fashion that we're having.
Yeah.
Because it's even for me, it's like you have thousands and thousands of clothes and you're just so attached to them, you cannot let them go. And that's creating an impact on the environment.
Yeah. I tried doing this in college where I tried to not buy anything for a few months.
How many days did it last?
I lasted a while, because you have stuff, you forget how much stuff you have. Once you try a 1 month of no buying clothes and see how many clothes you find in your closet and what you can do.
I think we should start a social challenge of it. Then it will be a thing in Pakistan. Otherwise, with the Eid coming, you can see people buying anything
and everything. And I think as the Lahori's, we're very bas jora le de.
Exactly. That's the thing with us. So, Rija, in your previous answer, you mentioned one thing, that it's all about the infrastructure that you're having, which will make the impact, which is going to help you out in it. So, I see a lot of industries, like at DSG, we worked with a number of clients. It's textile, rice, then we gold stores and everything. Everyone has some sort of waste. So, there's the thing that it has to be a certain kind of infrastructure to be able to recycle it. So what do you think that what are the basic challenges that the industry here in Pakistan is facing in terms of not having more and more of, recycling or having less waste in their systems?
I think the main thing is really, the business owners would not mind doing this. There's just a huge cost attached to it because it hasn't been done before. So there's nowhere they can just send their product and waste and be happy with it, right? They will have to invest in the collection. They will have to invest in the recycling process, and then they will have to invest in selling it also.
Exactly.
And that's a whole other business that, a primary business cannot just become another recycler. Everyone cannot be a recycler. What's happening abroad is that recycling, and even in Pakistan to some extent, recycling is becoming an industry. So there are people who are specializing in recycling or upcycling and doing great work, but there's not enough of them, I feel. And there's a lack of funding, there's a lack of awareness, there's a lack of young people going in there, even though I feel like recently there's been a lot of young people coming up, but we need more, and then we need them to be funded ASAP. And the government, again, you've pinpointed with waste and recycling, the main issue where it comes is there's a lack of policy.
Exactly.
And then there's a lack of implementation. So even for packaging, for example, and I was surprised to see this, there's no policy for the packaging industry or plan or any sort of thing like that. So it's just just do what you want to do. But we've been, pushing the government to at least have a 5-year plan, whatever it may be. Push
at least 5 year, because it's always 6 months plan.
Or think about us, we exist. All these other industries exist. Usually जो plans है और even industry status है वो textiles के ऊपर है या agriculture के ऊपर है और वो भी बस I think export बढ़ा लें उस तक है. No one is really thinking about R&D. We should have R&D centers. We should have vocational training. For example, in packaging, no one in any school is teaching us about packaging or design, or even when we have operators coming in, so they don't have vocational training over how to use a machine. Even with engineers,
and that brings in so much hazard as well.
Exactly. Even with engineers, right? So they don't know industry kya hai. They've
just read some books,
read something and made some project, and then they come and they see these huge machines and they don't know what to do, and we have to start from the basic with them. So there's that whole there's a lot that needs to be done, I feel
like it. So I think baby steps for the country. So what is mainly, as we pointed out, this issue with the policy, I think policy में बहुत बड़ा issue ये है कि it is not centralized. It is not like we have the same waste management or recycling or industry policy for all of the Pakistan. In Lahore, we see this excellent hygiene conditions. It's all clean. Then we go to central Punjab, we will not see the same thing. And then let's just not talk about Sindh, that what are the conditions there.
Yeah.
So I think what needs to be done, that it needs to be long term, but more like it needs to be centralized. It needs to be same for all of the provinces, so that the change can flow from one corner to another, rather than we're just doing few things. For example, what can few industries like yours and mine can do? Obviously, there's a culture that needs to come in. So talking about culture, the hope lies with the younger generation, as we said, and we have seen that our generation, I would say, have really talked about it, because obviously the effects were very much evident, but again, we were at least thinking about what could be done. So what would you recommend to the young people watching, that how can they start going about it, and how then they can make a change with the effect happening in the climate action?
I think don't be disillusioned. And I was reading up on this, is that like I think a lot of our generation has become disillusioned and overwhelmed, because it's such a big issue, and you're like, what can I do? You know, my straw like will not really cause like the climate change to stop happening or my kids to have a better life. And definitely it can, your one straw maybe cannot change it, but it's, I think, time to now take charge of our own destinies, and go and fight for what we want, get those grants. There's those loans for women businesses, register your business. It's so easy, actually. You can just like, I had a guy online do it for me for like 2,000 rupees, register my business, and just start doing stuff and become like what you want to see, because we don't have the time to now wait for us to be like, oh, someone's gonna come and help us. No one's gonna help us. Especially not the people in power, especially not the people who can afford to
move out to a better place.
Move to maybe London or wherever. So it's going to have to be us. So let's just get out of just making TikToks, which is great if you're making awareness and all of that, but maybe
meaningful things, please.
Meaningful things. And if you have an idea, just do it. That's what I've been seeing, even with a lot of young entrepreneurs. It's just people who had the courage to do something, and if you have an idea, have the courage to do it.
Exactly.
I think that's really
and I think how many entrepreneurs do we see that are actually bringing in a business which is not capitalism centered, but actually something for the people that you're serving. So as you mentioned before, that recycling, I don't see many recycling companies in Pakistan. So as we say that wherever there's a problem, there's an opportunity. So if you're looking at a problem in Pakistan, that waste management is an issue, just come up with an idea. It's going to help you and the community.
And there's a lot of grants for this. I've been in the community where these recycling.
I think Jizz recently opened up
huge amount of grants, and I know a couple of people who won the Jizz grant. So they have grants. USAID has grants. I mean, whatever is happening with USAID, but there's a lot of grants. Even Pakistan government will have grants, because we're getting them from COP 28 and 29. We've been pledged a bunch of money, and that has to go to.
We hope that comes in this time.
Well, chalo jaise bhi jitna bhi aa jaye, that's gonna come. So I see this with women a little bit, where men have the confidence to start their thing.
Something from scratch. Taking that risk of doing anything.
All they have is confidence, though. They might not be as smart as us, or have the same skills as us, but one thing that we lack is the confidence to do something. And I would really encourage all women to just have that confidence in yourself.
Definitely.
And I've seen this in like my 5-year journey in Pakistan, and you look at like all these people who are so successful, and you try to sort of like talk to them, or sort of understand, and there's just one difference. And
definitely.
It's just their belief in themselves.
Exactly. So I think it's all about the beliefs that you're bringing in, that change is going to come in, and we are going to be the people who are going to bring that change. So I think it has been a wonderful conversation, Rija. Thank you so much for joining in, and looking forward to the times we'll be seeing change in Pakistan through our generation. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And for the people watching, I think the takeaway, like every time, is that let's keep talking green. Let's keep talking about it till we see an actual change in Pakistan and we move towards the greener future of Pakistan, as we say. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be back with another episode very soon. Allah Hafiz.